being excited about something that a fast food chain does is not cool. However, in 2023, one of the big fast food restaurants was marketing a disgusting-looking purple milkshake. And to go along with this, they released a Game Boy game. This was not one of the edgy, cool, second-tier fast food restaurants. This was like the big one. And here they were creating a fully playable Game Boy game in, as we used to say back at that time, the year of our Lord 2023. This was as good a sign as any that interest in a basically dead console was actually at an all-time high, but also that the tools that would allow almost anyone to create a game on that platform were now accessible enough that you could just sort of do it as a fun little marketing stunt for your billion-dollar French fry company. Like many kids, when I was a young boy, my father told me, son, always be a good boy, don't... I was delighted when I coded my first game in QBasic, the, MS-DOS kind of learning permit coding language. I think the only thing that anyone does in QBasic is programs a number guessing game, which of course, back when I was a kid, number guessing games really were all the rage. And so you could see why we were so excited to make one of our own. In an attempt to nurture this obviously nascent passion that I had for coding, a good friend of my dad's came over for a poker game one night and brought me a book to learn C++, and it was over. That book was terrifying. I read Misery when I was pretty young, and this book was scarier. Coding anything beyond a number guessing game in QBasic was the domain of the characters from Hackers back then.
Hide the planet! Hide the planet!
Shut up and get in the car!
Hide the planet!
If you weren't Crash or Burn, coding felt like it was not for you. So if you wanted to code a Game Boy game in the 1990s, you were using a massive, unwieldy developer's kit. GB Studio completely upended what it meant to create a Game Boy game. In discovering Pico 8, which if you haven't watched the last episode, you should, it was good. I realized that the avenues to game programming had changed a lot in the last 2,000 years. Since I learned QBasic, we've developed electricity and indoor plumbing and GB Studio. GB Studio is how we get games like Traumatarium. And of course, Traumatarium Penitent. You do not need to know assembly, or C++, or QBasic to use GB Studio. It doesn't look like code. You don't get to do your little Joey Pants fantasy. It uses visual scripting. You draw a line connecting door A to room B, and a player can move from room to room. It's not easy. This is still incredibly hard work. But it fundamentally changes access to creating games for the most iconic video game console of all time. With the barrier of needing to read a gigantic book that your dad's friend brings over to your house when they're playing poker now not in the way, it's amazing to see what people are making for Game Boy. Twin Peaks, meanwhile, adapts Cooper and the Black Lodge into a classic NES-style RPG. And then there's Doom. There's always Doom. Besides Doom, I also do feel obligated to mention that Grimace's birthday, that was GB Studio. I have to imagine, although I am not because I abandoned coding, as you've all heard so extensively about now, that if you had spent much of your life learning the ins and outs of Z80, assembly language, you'd be frustrated to know that someone like me could just as easily make a Game Boy game in the year of our Lord 2026. But if those people exist, and I truly think I'm inventing a straw man here, they're wrong. We are living through an era of explosive growth and creativity in the world of independent Game Boy games. The result is games that look and feel like the AAA games of my youth, because I'm old and the Game Boy is really part of my youth. But the democratization of these tools, of the act of making a game for the kind of, I don't know, let's be honest, like the actual best console ever made.
They said it wasn't humanly possible. All the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand.
This isn't an opinion I'm really allowed to have. Like, I'm not like a serious video game person. I'm just like a passionate man. Well, I'm sure there are several riveting multi-hour video essays about this on the internet. I will say that I think the reason that the Game Boy retains the hallowed place in my heart and the hearts of many others is the intimacy of it. You played it on road trips. You played it in your bedroom when you're supposed to be sleeping. It was yours in a way that Nintendo or Super or Genesis, if you were a little edgy like that, never truly were. Those belong to your dad. And the intimacy of the relationship that people have with Game Boy has allowed for very fascinating manifestations of, I guess, what a video game can be in the year of our Lord 2096. Take a game like Small Town Emo, which if you look at the box art is not made for the Game Boy, but in fact made for the Gay Boy. This is not a game that was getting made for the Game Boy back in the day. This is a queer coming-of-age story set in small town New Zealand. And it utilizes the small stature of the Game Boy to invoke the claustrophobia of being a person who feels out of place in the small place that they are currently stuck. When you create a game in GB Studio, you're literally making a ROM. You're making a playable Game Boy game. Just like, Duke Nukem is actually the first thing that came to mind for me. I really liked the side-scrolling Game Boy Color Duke Nukem. For a few bucks on AliExpress, who probably should have sponsored this entire series, you can flash that game onto a cart. You can play that game on your real-ass Game Boy. Or your real-ass Analog Pocket, or your real-ass Mini Plus. #Spawn. We are fully living in an era where needing to spend the years required in order to be good at programming in assembly is no longer a barrier to entry. There still is a barrier, which is you need an idea. You need the creative spark. But the space between your idea and the people who want to experience, who want to play your game on their Gay Boy, is much, much smaller now. If this was the series I originally intended for it to be, about homebrew games and their history, it would be about hacking and porting mostly. But what I find so exciting, a word that I'm pretty sure I'm using too much these days, is that today, this is about creating. The tools are no longer a barrier. Having a good idea, committing time to bring that good idea to life, that's the barrier. So if you've ever had an idea for a game in the shower, you should download this. It is free. You can pay for it, and you should pay for it. But the point is, democracy. Be excellent to each other.